This video will show you how to replace your front lower control arm on this Toyota Corolla. This is part of your front steering and suspension located behind your front wheel. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on the replacement of our lower control arm. We're starting under the hood, we have to do a little digging. A quick note, make sure you support the front end of your vehicle with jack stands so your front wheels are off the ground before we get started. To be able to gain access, I'm going to start with the engine cover. We'll lift this up and out of the way. Now we're going to start dislodging the air intake hose here. Down where it connects to the throttle body, you're going to find a 10mm headed clamp. Let's loosen the clamp enough that we can remove this from the throttle body. Now up here we have a breather tube. It's a squeezable clamp. Just go ahead and squeeze that in and we'll dislodge this as well. Now we're making our way over towards the air filter housing. Let's start dislodging the upper air filter housing from the lower housing. You're going to find you have two locking clips. There's one over towards the driver's side here. The other one's just on the other side of the housing. It's the same process. Just go ahead and grab onto it, pull it out of place. Let's lift this up and off of here. Set that aside. Remove your air filter. A quick inspection, set that aside as well. With that out of the way, we're going to start dislodging this wiring harness. It has a locking tab. If you were reaching along the back side, approximately right around here, you should be able to squeeze that in, and we'll dislodge this. I'll show you in 1 second here. Okay. See if I can turn this over. There's our tab right there. It's time for our 3 10mm mounting bolts, and then we'll slide it out and away from this area. We're going to start removing the battery next. We're starting with the negative battery terminal. That's closest towards the driver's side. You can either remove the terminal end from the battery, or if you have a cable like ours, I'm just going to remove the cable from that terminal end. I don't want to strip anything out. On my application, I'm using an 11mm for my bolt. We'll pull that out of place. Make sure you set that aside so it's making no contact. Now it's time for the positive terminal. We're using a 10mm. Next, we're going to remove the battery hold down. That has a 10mm bolt and a 10mm nut. We'll remove the battery. Now we can start dislodging our electrical wiring harness from this area. Along this portion, we're going to want to lift up. For this portion over here, we're going to pull backwards or rearward. That should lift up and out of there. Now we're going to start dismounting the transmission mount from the body of the vehicle. To do that, we're going to have to dislodge the PCM mounting bracket. If you were looking along either side, you're going to find that you have 10mm mounting bolts. There's one on the front side here and there's two along the rear. Get our next one here. Now we can lift this up and shift it around as necessary. Now to remove the bracket, you're going to find that there's 4 14mm bolts. There's one in the front, 2 along the center here, and 1 just along the back side. Let's get those out of here. Now go for the one on the rear. Up here we can just use our gun if we have one. Now that we have this mount dislodged from the body of the vehicle, we have 2 more mounts that we're going to have to work with. We have a rear mount and a forward engine mount. For those, we're going to make our way safely under the front of the vehicle. Before we remove those mounts, let's remove our driver's side front wheel. Now what we're looking for here is the mounting hardware for our rear engine mount. That's going to be located just up here, so we're looking along the bottom of the subframe. There's 4 pieces of mounting hardware. 2 of them are out in the open, and then the other 2 are in these 2 circular ports. For these, I'll be using a 14 millimeter. Now we're making our way to the front mount. That's located just above this cross member. Inside of each of these 2 ports, you're going to find a 14 millimeter bolt. Next, we're going to apply support and upward pressure on the transmission. We need to start bringing the transmission and engine up so we can gain clearance for this mounting bolt. I typically like to do this right along the inboard side of the transmission pan. You can see the housing here. We're not pressing on the pan. We don't want to cause any damage. As far as this housing, you want to use some sort of pad. You can use a rubber pad or even a small chunk of wood if you're using a metal type of jack. Let's see if we can get this in here. Slow and steady wins the race here. There we go. Now we only need to go up high enough that we can remove this bolt. We don't want to hit up against the transmission pan. Make your adjustments as necessary. Once you have the transmission high enough, we're making our way all the way to where the control arm meets our lower ball joint. The ball joint's held to the control arm with 2 17 millimeter nuts and 1 17 millimeter mounting bolt. We'll start with the bolt. Now we can take hold of the control arm, we'll pull it down. That separates it from the ball joint. Now after separating that, we're making our way to the rear hardware. For this, you're going to find a 19 millimeter headed bolt going straight up through your subframe, through the control arm, and up along the top of the subframe. Up there's a 19 millimeter mounting nut, so I'm going to hold that with a wrench. Now we're moving to the forward mounting bolt. Keep in mind, as we remove this, there really isn't much holding the control arm in, aside from a couple bushings. We'll hold on to the control arm as we remove that final bolt. Now we're going to start pivoting this. We want to make sure we're clear from our lower ball joint studs, and we'll start focusing where the control arm meets the subframe right here along the front. For this, typically you can pull it out of place. If you find you have a hard time, gently pry. Pull it away along the front, and then we'll also pull it away along the rear after. There it is, friend. Prior to installing the brand new control arm, carefully clean and inspect all mounting areas. Be careful for any metal burrs that might be in these areas that can cause harm. Okay, let's prepare to install that brand new lower control arm. We're going to bring this into position starting with the rear bushing first. When we bring this into position, we want to make sure we have our mounting bolt handy. We'll start bringing this in. Now, aligning the center port on the bushing can be fairly difficult with aligning it with the ports on the subframe itself. Once we start sliding this in, more than likely it'll be at an angle. We'll get the bolt through as far as possible, and then we'll have to make an adjustment using our 19 millimeter socket and a 1/2 inch drive extension. Now we can tap this in with a rubber mallet if necessary. I've got this pretty close. Let's see if I can get this in. Now we can see the bolt is going at an angle. Like I said, we can make our adjustments. We'll continue pressing it up. You can tap with a hammer if necessary. Let's get our mounting nut on the top there. Just start it on. We're leaving this loose. It's time for the forward bushing. See if we can get this in here. We'll start it in by hand, but leave that loose as well. Now that we have both of those bolts started in, we're going to pause on reinstalling the ball joint into the control arm. We want to have the control arm in the original ride height position. The bushings are doing that. With that said, we're going to start snugging and torquing our hardware. We'll start with the forward mounting bolt. Snug it up. The torque for this is 101 foot-pounds. Now let's make our way to the rearward mounting bolt. For the rear mounting bolt, we're going to be holding the upper mounting nut. The torque for this is 94 foot-pounds. We're all the way over at where the ball joint's going to connect to the control arm. Go ahead and pull down on that control arm while you bring the ball joint into place. The stud should slide right through the control arm. Be careful for any pinch points. Got hardware started on. For the ball joint hardware, bottom it out and torque that to 66 foot-pounds. It's time to start carefully lowering the engine and transmission down. We're paying attention to our two mounts that we can see from under here. When we bring this down, we don't want to have it completely against the subframe in case we have to move the mounts around to align the hardware. Now I can see that my rearward stud is not properly aligned yet. Obviously, we're not going to stick our hands in this area. We'll just use a pry bar, try to shift the engine and transmission around until it starts dropping down. Now I can see that this dropped down all the way to the subframe, so I'm just going to raise it a little bit here, as I mentioned, so we can make our adjustments and start in the hardware. Now let's start with the rear mounting hardware. We've got our bolt, we'll bring it through this port. Now we've got 3 mounting nuts, one for this stud, and then one inside of each of these ports. That's where the studs are for the mount. Now we're going to pause here. Leaving these loose, let's make our way to the forward engine mount next. Now as far as the forward mount, look up above this cross member. This is where we can see the mount. Got one of my bolts. Let's get the next one in there. With all the hardware started in, let's lower the engine and transmission until the completely seated position. Remove your jack. We're starting with the front engine mount mounting hardware. Snug it up, torque that to 38 foot-pounds. Now let's make our way to the rear hardware. For the rear, same process, snug them up, torque them to 38 foot-pounds. Let's get our wheel in place. Now at this point, we're going to start on all 5 of our 21mm lug nuts. We'll bottom them out, get the wheel safely on the ground, and we can torque these to 76 foot-pounds. With the wheel back on the ground, let's torque each one of our 21mm lug nuts to 76 foot-pounds. Torqued. Now in the same place on the transmission that we originally raised it, we're going here again. You don't want to jack up on that transmission pan, it can cause an issue. Light pressure here, There we are. Let's make our way back up into the engine compartment. We're back inside the engine compartment. Let's start paying attention to our transmission mount. You may have to adjust the height of the transmission to get things aligned. We have our 4 mounting bolts. Start all of them in before tightening any of them. Let's get our next one in here. Let's get our 3rd bolt in here. It's right along the back side. Let's get our forward bolt in there. We have all the hardware started in. Now we can start snugging it up. I'm starting with the top hardware. We'll bottom everything out. The torque for this will be 47 foot-pounds. Before tightening those, let's make sure we remove support from under the transmission. Now we can get our torque wrench on the forward mounting bolt. As for the rearward bolt, we'll just have to make sure that's nice and tight using a wrench. Nice long wrench. Now it's time to get our PCM in place. We'll slide the bracket down into position along our fuse box panel. We have 1 bolt towards the front and 2 along the back side there. Get this one in here. I'm just going to try to guide it in with my extension. They're started in, snug them up. Now we're moving to re-secure our wiring harness along the bottom of this. It has a small port for this to slide into, so we're just going to start aligning that. We'll press it forward. Now once you have that pressed forward on this side, we have 1 little tab that protrudes down. It fits into that port right down in this area. Line it up, press it in. It's time for our lower air filter housing. We're going to slide it over this area. We'll press it on as far as possible. Continue on with our 3 10mm mounting bolts. Now we're going to start in all 3 of our mounting bolts before tightening any of them. We have that mounted. We're continuing on to our electrical wiring harness. We need to secure it on its bracket. Line it up, press it on. Double check, make sure that's secured in place. We'll continue on with our air filter in this area. As far as the air filter, you want to make sure you have it in the proper orientation. You can see that you have 3 rounded corners and 1 squared corner. The square corner goes in the front towards the engine. Now it's time for the upper air filter housing. We'll start along the front. Just going to bring this into position. Once you have it slid all the way forward, roll it down and continue on with your 2 locking tabs. Let's connect this onto the throttle body next. We're bringing this over. Make sure the clamp's still in place. Press it onto the throttle body as far as possible. Double check all the way around to confirm it's properly seated. Now we're going to tighten that 10mm headed clamp. We'll make sure that does not fall off and continue on to our breather tube. Line it up, press it on, make sure the clamp's in place as well. Just pivot that. Now it's time to install the battery. Bring this down nice and easy. We'll make sure we're seated properly on the battery tray. Now I like to use some anti-seize right along these 2 areas. Now we can get our battery hold down in place. Now to tighten this down, we're going to start with our bolt. and we'll make our way over towards the mounting nut here. When we go to snug this, you don't want to continue tightening until you're bending this. Essentially, we just want to make sure the battery can't move around, so we'll just snug it as needed. Now, prior to reattaching our cables, it's a good idea to clean the battery terminals. I'm using a battery terminal cleaner. You can also use some sandpaper if necessary. Just want to make sure you have good contact point there. The terminal end. You can use sandpaper or wire brush, whatever you have. Just make sure there's no miscellaneous corrosion. We'll press that positive terminal onto the battery terminal as far as possible and tighten your 10mm mounting nut. Double check to make sure that's secured, protect the area. Move along to your negative terminal. On ours, we left the terminal end in place, but otherwise just use your battery brush, clean everything up just as you did before. Since I am using this, I'm going to use some sandpaper, make sure I have a clean contact point. We'll slide this into place, line it up. My application, 11mm mounting bolt. Okay friend, we finished the installation of our lower control arm. At this point, take your vehicle for a road test, listen for any odd noises, and get yourself a four-wheel alignment. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.